I remember one day I was in the office and this woman had been depressed for 12 years. And it dawned on me, she's here, she's not there. And so I said to her, what does being depressed help you to avoid? And startled her, And I waited and waited. And I just waited. And she said, as long as I'm depressed, I don't have to change. And she had it all worked out. As long as I'm depressed, I don't have to change. And I saw her, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. And I still started talking about the life movement. Let's talk about changing. And that did it. But she was over there because she was more afraid it was over there and didn't realize it. The second thing, and this is almost paradoxical. Real fears, you win or you lose. Combat veterans, you parachute, they're alive, the car misses you or it hits you. Someone shoots at you, they hit you, they'll get you. So if it's a real fear, it's going to be, you're going to win or you're going to lose. Now if it's a self-defeating behavior, you can tell because it's a win or tie. What does that mean? So Bruce is home on Saturday night and he's afraid to ask a girl out. So I say to Bruce, you're home alone Saturday night. What's the worst thing that can happen if you ask a girl out? Where was you going to be? Home alone Saturday night. That's how it works, huh? My own situation, getting D-minuses. What's the worst thing that could happen if I had tried? I got D-minuses. And you're going to find that all mythical fears are a win-tie situation, and real fears aren't that way at all. And the last thing is, what's the worst thing that can happen to you? The worst thing that can happen to you if you stop your self-defeating behaviors is you'd be exactly where you're at today. What's that mean? The worst thing that can happen is I'd have failed. And my self-defeating behaviors ensured the failure. And the paradox is, it isn't our fears that create the loss in our life, the self-defeating results. It's the self-defeating behaviors themselves that create the problem. I remember one time I was working with my weight issues, I was in a club, and I just weighed over 300 pounds, and I stepped on the scale, and blink, couldn't register. So I yell at the custodian, what's the problem? In his best baritone voice, he yells, it can't measure anything over 300 pounds. Thanks for letting all of us know. Thanks a lot. What's the worst thing if I had tried? I'd weigh 300 pounds. If the behavior is biochemical, it'll be constant. The behavior will be constant. If it's self-defeating behavior, it's going to come and go. People aren't depressed all the time, and it's self-defeating behavior. If it comes and goes, it's self-defeating behavior. If it's constant, it's biochemical. And certain people need biochemical medications because they're depressed all the time. What you're going to find with self-defeating behaviors is they come under a trigger pattern. When does it happen? Where does it happen? And with whom? I was lecturing in a church a while back, and I explained that biochemical or constant behaviors and self-defeating behaviors come and go. And this woman was very mad at me. And people have been mad at me. It kind of surprised me because they don't like what I'm saying. And she was yelling and screaming her behaviors are biochemical. So I said to her, when does it happen? She said, Saturday. I said, where are you? At home. With whom? By myself. So you're home alone on Saturday night by yourself, and you think that's biochemical. Yes, it's biochemical. That's the way it is. Remember, all these behaviors are picked up through negative experiences, and we're trying to protect ourselves. And we find behaviors that work, we knock it in there. We have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of positive behaviors. How to talk to people, how to write books, how to order a cup of coffee, how to dress. We've packaged this stuff in there. It's just those little spurs in there, those real negative patterns that keep you having trouble. And they always come off negative experiences. And most of it's other people hurt us. That's where most of the pain comes. People don't sit around and talk about how the trees hurt and how bad the pine was, or the oaks that afternoon. I remember when I was at Western doing my undergraduate work, I read a book called, I don't remember one thing about the book, but I remember the title. And the title was, I can't remember. I just give that. First Love and Other Sorrows. I remember at that time I transferred to Northern Illinois to get my master's, and my girlfriend was still at Western. And she wrote me a Dear John letter. And I was shocked because my name's Bob. Dear John. But she basically said, I don't want anything to do with you. It's dump the chumps and you're the chump for the day. And that's emotionally painful. You think you love someone, you're young, you're fresh. I remember being very upset and depressed over that, and somewhat suicidal, and I got in my car at NIU and went uptown and threw myself in a moment of passion and anger and love in front of a parked car. Unfortunately, I survived that incident. And my daughter, too, she went to LA a number of years ago working film. I knew she was going into one of the worst places. All I could think of was Sodom and Gomorrah, greed and emphasis on physical beauty. And the only place she could have gone worse is Washington, D.C., because that's Hollywood for homely people. So I told her before she goes to LA, she had better take some voice lessons. And she said, why? She said, you're going to go through some very difficult times, emotionally, financially, and the people you meet out there. She said, well, how's that going to help me? I said, well, if you get a commanding voice, you can go on to social services in a year or two, and you can walk in the London stage, a great presentation, and you can say, yes, I qualify for food stamps. A friend of mine asked me a while back how he could change his behaviors. And I said, there's nothing to change. And he said, I know it's confusing, but that's the truth. He said, it's confusing. What do you mean by that? The key isn't, there's nothing to change. The past is gone. The key is not to repeat the behaviors in new moments of life. And Dr. Cunningham, one of the most important things he taught me, he said, first time I saw him lecture, he said, most people look back in the past. You know, look back in there and, oh, my alcoholic father and the neighbor abused me and the teachers and coaches were critical of me. And that's all true. That's why it started. That's true. We had that experience back in there. We put that behavior in there. We form that conclusion. And then it keeps coming true over and over again. And we deepen that conclusion inside. That's why it started. It doesn't help you change at all. The real question is how you come into a new moment of life and repeat the behavior. Come to a new moment of life and repeat the behavior. And come to that's the real critical question. One time I had a gentleman come to see me. He was crying and bawling and weeping. He was just a mess. And I asked him what was wrong. It was, and he said his father was so horrible to him. I thought his dad beat him up in the front office. He was just a mess. And I just happened to say, where's your father at today? And he said, oh, he died 20 years ago. So then the question, where it really belongs, is how did this gentleman repeat the behavior back against himself? The model to eliminate self-defeating behaviors is based upon one fundamental choice. And if we were to freeze a moment in time, if this is a frozen moment in time, you're going to see a person has a split second who looks up the life road or looks up the STB road. Now, all sense that you're supposed to just go up the life road. The problem, of course, remember, it was when they were close and warm and loving that they got hurt, or when someone tried to achieve something, and they're afraid of that cruel world out there. They need that buffer. So you stop in a moment of time, and it says, I go that way or that way. And it's a very specific type of choice. It's called a directional choice. Obviously, if I block this road off with fear, what's left? I go this way. What we don't understand is there's a block here too. And what blocks people from doing self-defeating behaviors is they pay prices for the behaviors. And when I weighed 300 pounds, I had all kinds of health issues and medication issues and self-image issues. And all those prices were telling me to come back and go over here. But that fear blocks. And so people are in real blocks. They're afraid not to repeat behaviors that hurt them. That's the classic box.